Hello, I'm Chuck Martin, and welcome to the Voices of the Internet of Things. With me today is Susan Panico, Senior Vice President of Strategic Solutions at Pandora. Susan has served as Vice President as well as Senior Director of Sales Marketing at Pandora. She previously worked at Sony as Senior Director of the PlayStation Network and Director of Product and Online Marketing at Sony Computer Entertainment America. At Pandora, Susan leads the B2B marketing functions, driving the overall marketing strategy. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, Chuck. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. Could you give our listeners a brief background on Pandora? Because Pandora has been around for what seems like forever, and so a lot of people may actually have just bumped into it in recent years because of a lot of voice things we're going to talk about.
Sure. So Pandora is the leading music streaming service in the US, where we have over 73 million active users, and we've amassed our audience and the level of engagement that we have because we deliver personalized music where no two people's stations are alike, and people are spending a lot of time listening to music, where in fact it's the number one app in mobile time spent above other gaming, social, and utility platforms out there.
And how has this evolved? Because initially you were just over PCs, right?
So yeah, initially when we started, we were over PCs, and then I believe it was in 2007 where we appeared on the Apple iPhone, and our trajectory as a mobile service just hockey sticked right up there. And now I like to think of Pandora as we're just as much a mobile company and a data company as we are a music company.
And as a data company, how are you doing your analysis? Because you must have a ton of data.
Yeah, we actually sit on a treasure trove of data. So the secret sauce to Pandora is the Music Genome Project. The Music Genome is created where we had human music curators and musicologists analyze each and every song that went into Pandora's music genome by over 400 individual traits. And that's why on Pandora, what really distinguishes the experience from any other service is we always serve up the next best and perfect song because it's based on the attributes of the song and not a collaborative filter.
So is that a form of artificial intelligence, or is it really just data processing?
Well, I'd say that it started off more as human intelligence because we had real humans scoring the attributes of all those songs and then loading it into the music genome. And now that that's evolved over 12 years, we still have musicologists looking at all the attributes of songs, but we've been able to optimize it from a technology standpoint as well. So we're getting the best of both worlds to help scale all of that human input that we took a lot of time to build and to differentiate. And then what we do is, when you asked previously about being just as much a data company, is we've built off that science and brought that into the advertising community. We've been able to monetize over $1 billion in advertising for the last couple of years per year. And a lot of that is because of the capabilities of our data and allowing marketers to leverage that data to reach the customers that they want through the passion point of music.
Got it. So let's talk about the Internet of Things now, because obviously smart speakers in the home have been taking off, especially most recently. And I know you did some research around that. What did you find?
So, the connected home and particularly connected voice activated speakers has been a really high growth area for Pandora. And just to give a little context, and I'll tell you about the research study, is we have over 2,000 connected devices. So for Pandora, we very early on sought out a ubiquity strategy to make sure that Pandora was effortless and easy to find wherever people went. And the connected home has been the fastest growing platform for us, with 40% year over year growth just at the end of our third quarter here. And the voice activated user in particular, we've seen 300% year over year growth. And with that tremendous growth, there's obviously a lot of opportunity for marketers to connect with people. So we partnered with Edison Research, and Edison is a very trusted research firm. They're mostly well known for doing the exit poll research during massive presidential and other elections. But we partnered with them to take a look at what the usage of connected home voice activated devices were in the home. And what was really interesting about this research in particular is the methodology. So we actually had the owners of these devices send their log files to Edison so that we can see what their actual behaviors were and validate it through that method. And a few insights really struck me is that there's a perception that voice activated technology and voice activated speakers is a young techie proposition. But what we saw was that with 18 to 34, as well as 35 to 54, was pretty evenly split in terms of ownership and use. But what was also interesting was that a quarter of the people who own these devices were 55 plus. So this is no longer a tech savvy younger proposition. It's really going mainstream, and you see a lot of different age groups using it.
Well, they're also an obvious device for playing music in the home.
Right. So, we as Pandora have an endemic advantage with smart speakers, but what you saw too was that audio usage overall for people that bought these speakers increased 65%, and 58% of them are listening to music. So music really does play that soundtrack to life, even more so in the home. And it gives a lot of interesting opportunities for people from a marketing perspective to think about.
Is that because it's basically, no matter how tech savvy you are or not, it's just so easy to do to say, Amazon Alexa, play such and such a kind of music?
For sure. I like to think about voice has really become the new touch. And I'm a mother of 3 children, and they're 8, 10, and 12. And my 8-year-old, about 5 years ago, when she was young, just a toddler, we were in a Best Buy store, and she walked up to this large screen TV and was trying to swipe the TV. And when the TV wouldn't respond to her or swipe or do anything, she got really mad at it and turned to me and said, Mom, this TV's broken, don't buy it. And you flash forward now, and all my children are engaging with devices using their voice. That generation is certainly growing up that way. And then when you start going up in the older generations, again, there's so many devices that are incorporating the technology. It's just really easy and effortless to use. And it's not surprising because voice is the most innate thing that we started with since the dawn of man. And a lot of people might think it's lazy, but it's really more a natural state for the way people communicate in a much more human way.
So how does Pandora? Because of your scale and your size, how do you keep up with all of the technology? Are you just working hand in hand with the major players, the Apples and Amazons and so forth?
Sure. So as I was mentioning before, is we want to make sure that listeners can take Pandora with them wherever they go. So we partner with a lot of different players in the space. From a voice activation standpoint, it's your usual suspects of Apple and Google. We also partner with Sonos. And then when you look at the entire consumer opportunity, connected devices as a whole, we just partnered with Fitbit. We partnered with Apple Watch. It's making sure that you're able to stay tethered with people in that experience wherever they are.
So what would you do with the Fitbit tying into their smartwatch?
Yeah, so we tied Fitbit. We partnered with Fitbit. Fitbit actually thought that there was a great crossover with Pandora and their audience, and it's such a great way to monitor your fitness routine. Sorry, to accompany your fitness routines with music, and it was a very natural fit. No pun intended there. For us to partner with them.
So where do you see this going from here? Because the voice activated devices they're getting a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, we've even seen what I think is interesting is that, for a long time, humans have adapted to computers and have adapted to all the technology that keeps accelerating faster and faster. But now we're at this interesting point where computers are adapting to us, and computers are needing to adapt and become much more human. And there's this interesting juxtaposition with the more advanced the technology is, almost the simpler it needs to be for consumer adoption. And that's where I think voice becomes really, really interesting. And
go ahead.
Sorry. And we've seen that the error rate for voice recognition has significantly decreased just even in the last 10, 12 years, to where it's now less than 5%. And I love seeing where that technology is going in terms of being able to recognize whether it's gender or different voices by gender or dialects or what have you, will make it a much more opportunistic place for personalization.
So are you at the stage, is Pandora at the stage where you really are organized around an individual? So whether that individual is playing something through the smart speaker or on their mobile phone, that it basically is one unit?
Yeah, well, as I was talking about with our data that we sit on, so we can look at each listener and look at a lot of different attributes. So based on registration data, when they sign up for Pandora, we know their gender, we know their age, we know their location. But what happens as you start to look at their listener journey, we can tell what device they're on, what time of day they're listening. And then you get a lot of behavioral signals based on the music that they're listening to. So it could be genre based, artist based, and a lot of that listening behaviors gives us the signal so that we can, on an individual basis, get a lot more intelligent about how we serve messages to those audiences.
So if someone is if they're exercising on their Fitbit a few days a week, over time, your system knows that.
Yeah, and we could tell, for instance, a lot of contextually relevant behaviors, whether it's working out or doing activities like cooking or commuting. So we're able to create over 2,000 targeting segments that marketers can leverage to not only eliminate waste and reach the right people, but they could reach them at the right time. And the ultimate holy grail is with the right contextual relevancy. And that's what's so beautiful about these voice activated devices in the home. First of all, that there's no more personal geolocation that exists than someone's home, and that they're in their home and listening. So right away, as a marketer, you are understanding the environment that they're in, you're understanding where they are, and there's a lot of implications that the marketer should think about when talking to people in their home.
So the ultimate age-old question for everybody in this space is, what now is more important, the content, which you obviously have a lot of content, or the delivery mechanism going through, say, smart speakers in a home, or are they equal?
I think they're equal. I'm pretty much a classic marketer that I think you always start with your audience first and really understand who they are and think about what your positioning and differentiator is in the market. But once you get in the home, because of all of these voice activated devices, you really need to think about your audio strategy in a different way. And there's never been a more opportunistic time for marketers to think about how to leverage audio in the digital world, because it's not the same as the older archaic AM FM broadcast model. If you think about it, Chuck, everywhere you go with the proliferation of mobile devices, whether you're on a train or walking on the street or at the gym, what everybody has is they have a headset or earbuds in their ears. And we've really become this earbud generation where now audio is like an IV straight into the brain. And audio can really reach people where visuals can't. And that's why digital audio, I think, is what's going to be the next big platform. It has been on Pandora, but in terms of people really thinking about it in their media mix, the next big platform that's going to reach people where they are. So starting with the customer first, when you're looking at reaching people in their home, it really becomes important to think about, how do you reach them with a human voice? How do I make my brand sound more human? How do I connect with them knowing that I'm in this personal space? And the other thing that becomes really important is, a lot of marketers think about what their visual identity is. What's my logo? What are the colors of my brand? Who are the actors in my TV commercial? But they don't spend a lot of time thinking about their sonic identity. And because of that proliferation of mobile, because of the rise of voice activation in the home and on a lot of other IoT devices, it really becomes important for marketers to think about, what does my brand sound like? What is the voice that I want to associate with my brand? What's the right thing for my brand? Is it a jingle, or is it a mnemonic sound effect at the end of my logo? What are the ambient sounds that I use in my messaging? And then also really understanding, how do you differentiate that, knowing when somebody's at home, knowing that most people are probably co-listening with a spouse or children or friends, and having the opportunity to be extremely contextually relevant.
That's a real challenge for a lot of companies, because you're basically started as an audio company. It's sort of in the DNA of the organization. A lot of companies, so you're familiar with screenless marketing. Other marketers have been marketing to screens for forever, from TV on.
Yeah, that's exactly true. So we do now live in this screenless world, and you have to think about, how does your message reach people where visuals can't? And that's where audio plays an extremely important role. And one thing to think about too is this idea of theater of the mind, and how audio can really be leveraged to create a much more personable message, and therefore resonate more. So for an example, if you think about a commercial that you might see on TV or on mobile video, or in a visual space, that maybe it shows you a beach. Well, when that advertiser shows you that beach, that might not be a beach that you connect to. It might be something just way out of your lifestyle or geographical location. But when you use audio and you say to someone, hey, think about sitting on your favorite beach, like, immediately you could start with sound effects and sound design and theater of the mind, all of a sudden make that message very personable. And your beach might be the Caribbean, my beach might be the coast of California, it might be a lake in Tahoe. It's going to be different for everyone. And as marketers, that's where you get to be really creative, is how can you engage the imagination of the audience to help build the message as well.
But you already start with one-to-one marketing, because the individual they basically have self-selected their specific music at that moment. So it's one-to-one before you even start anything.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of Pandora, has been that we've pioneered that personalization capability just from the onset of what our entire service is based on, and have taken that personalization into the advertising environment and looked at, when to interrupt someone with an ad is just as important as how you interrupt them. And so those are a lot of the different levers that we look at when we're reaching listeners and connecting them with brands.
So how do you look at the Google Home versus Amazon Echo? Do you look at them all as the same, or do you say, well, this one is better for us than the other one?
Yeah, I think that we really look at a ubiquity strategy for Pandora and make sure that we're available where consumers are. There's a lot of growth in that space, and there's different opportunities to partner in different ways. But for the most part, whether it's Amazon, Google, Sonos, there's a lot of opportunity to bring people the music they love on Pandora through all those devices.
So are you, as a company, do you look at advanced technologies like autonomous driving, vehicle sharing, where consumers are basically going to have more free time to listen to music? Do you explore those kinds of things, or just wait for them to evolve and then just make sure you're there?
So when I was referencing that ubiquity strategy early on, we partnered with uh, several car manufacturers, nearly all of them, to integrate Pandora into the dash. And we've had 33 million activations of Pandora through an auto dash, covering over 200 vehicle models. And we do work closely with the automotive manufacturers and community, looking at how they evolve, as well as leveraging uh, things like Apple CarPlay and what that means for listeners, and making Pandora easy to find.
So the idea is you basically evolve with the connected car, so that before it's totally self-driving, they'd be listening to Pandora through the dash, and then when it becomes self-driving, they might be listening to it, but not driving, but still listening to it by some other mechanism inside the vehicle.
Right, and there's the auto space. You're on 5 to 7 year life cycles, right? In terms of where technology is going, and sometimes where what you're working with them on now ends up being different than later. But it'll be really interesting, because even with self-driving cars, there's still a lot of other opportunities to connect, bringing other devices into the car as well, whether it's your mobile phone or your watch, or uh, something that hasn't even been invented yet. But the idea is you have this multi-touch consumer opportunity, that you're following the consumer wherever they go, and anticipating human behavior and making it easy and effortless for them.
Got it. Any final thoughts?
Well, final thoughts is, audio is a really important way to reach people. You should think about human behavior, where they're spending time. They're spending time on connected devices. They're spending time listening to music. And audio is a must in any marketer strategy for this new age.
I totally agree. Thank you, Susan Panico, and thank you all for listening to the Voices of the Internet of Things.
Thanks, Chuck.